have different options, also different options around campus here. So what would be your preference for lunch? Or, everybody might have different things. Chick-fil-A.
Subway.
Subway.
Potbelly.
Potbelly. Chipotle. Popeyes. Okay. So we all have. I also like Subway and Potbelly a lot. I try to avoid Chick-fil-A due to age. I was 20 and anymore as you do. So we have different preferences. Now let's talk about these. How do we actually come to those preferences? So why do we use, for example, why do you think that Chick-fil-A, or the Popeye or the Potbelly is the reason that you might choose? What might be the, let's say, dimensions of that choice? Yeah.
The biggest part is
Convenience. Can you define a little bit about the convenience? What do you mean by convenience?
well, for me, I go to Subway because they're right across the street and they get a student discount.
Location. And you also get
A student discount.
a student discount. So what was your name again?
Brady.
Brandy said basically two components were there, let's do a little brainstorming here. So convenience. Price. Location. Anything else there? Yep. Time, service time, right? Just service speed. See? Personal preference, what do you mean by that?
Based on your taste,
Options, you mean taste, personal preference. That's right, personal preference. That's exactly what we want. Customer service, right? Customer service.
The quality of the food that's offered there.
Quality. Products that we get. Examples. Anything else?
whether or not your friends are going.
Popularity, maybe that could be an interesting, whether in friends and going there. That could be definitely a valid point.
Offer amenities like Wi-Fi, drive-throughs, and stuff like that.
Utilities, right? Just amenities. Yeah. So the list can go on and on, but actually we captured pretty much the basic concept that when we choose anything, be it our school for our education, or any other product, a laptop, or a simple choice like what are we going to eat, lunch, we basically in our mind we have a vector of choices that we kind of fill them in, and then we try to find the best possible choice that fits into that maps our this vector, or personal vector, if you will, to that product. So that's what we do, right? That's how we choose things. Economists formalize this concept and they call it a utility. If you already took a microecon course, that you already way more familiar with the concept of utility. So they say that a customer's preference of a product or services, entire thing is called as utility that you derive from that product, and actually it has even though you can make it very personalized or like you can express it in a very detailed manner, they say roughly it falls into three categories. The first one is that the consumption utility that you get from that, the benefit. The second one is the price, and the third one is the inconvenience. So basically, so consumption utility is a measure of how much you like a service, right? So whether, like how much you would like a restaurant if it was for free and there's no waiting time, and it was like basically all these extra details were not there, how much you like it by just being the product itself. So, whereas the consumption utility comes from two major attributes of the product. It's called the performance and the fit. So we already talked about somehow the performance and the fit here. So the performance typically refers to the products where refers to the attributes where an average customer would agree. So like pretty much we all agree that a faster service is better than a slower service. I'm not talking about a fast food is better than a slow food, like that's a different story, but we all agree that when we go into a restaurant, there should be a kind of an optimum speed of service that and typically, especially if you're in a rush, faster is better. We typically agree that faster computer is better than a slower computer, for obvious reasons. But do we all agree that a faster car is better than a slower car? Maybe we do. But there might be people saying that, oh no, I don't like my child, my kid to drive a fast car. I don't want to buy them a Porsche. I want to buy them a Beetle or something because he or she is not very experienced, and then she might hurt herself or himself. So these things, when we have individual preferences, they're called fit. So the performance is something on average everybody agrees. Fit is not everybody agrees. It depends on the personal choice. Like here in our case, exactly for the food we need personal preference, right? Just some people don't eat chicken, so chicken fillet would not be a good choice for them, or a steak restaurant would not be a good choice for a vegan. Same idea. So this is the part of the consumption utility, and then we have the price. So that the consumption utility says the performance and fit, and then we have the price. So the price is the total cost of owning the product. Like actually, prices should be considered as an ownership of the cost of ownership. In case of a restaurant example, we all prefer to go to the Chick-fil-A on that corner rather than just going over to the Chick-fil-A in the West Loop unless we have an appointment or something over there. And the reason is very obvious because we don't simply waste time and money to go somewhere else while there is something else here. So typically when we're making a decision, that price should include the transaction cost that we are paying to get as a company. And then the inconvenience is the reduction in utility that results from the effort of obtaining the product or service. As in the transportation cost, where is the monetary value for the price of owning that product, the inconvenience is the inconvenience simply coming from that we need to travel or the inconvenience we have to suffer due to getting that service. So like two major components of inconvenience are location, the place where a consumer can obtain the product, or the time, basically the service. So we already talked about that. These are the components of inconvenience. And this is personal preference. So clearly clearly the timing also includes if something is far away, we also waste time. So that's a part of the and so if we want to map the consumer's utility, then we will simply say that there is a consumption utility, which will be separated in the performance and fit. And remember, consumption utility is the utility that we think about that if the product is for free and there is zero inconvenience, what would we prefer? Even in those cases, we might differentiate from different products. Like even if it is free and there's no inconvenience, we might prefer some products and not prefer the others. Then the price and the inconvenience, which is the location and time. So this is the customer's perspective in a nutshell. Now let's look at the firm's perspective. So like, what are the goals of a restaurant? Profit. Like every entity, in business entity, if it's not a non-governmental or governmental organization, typically works to make a profit. So in a very abstract and high level, a business is nothing but taking some inputs, turning out those inputs to an output, and generating money in the process. And so those inputs can be goods or services, but that's the profit is the ultimate thing. But so that makes this discussion a little bit dull and dry and a little bit abstract. If we just simply say that everything is about profit, then there's nothing much to discuss. That is true, everything is about profit, but let's feel inside that profit term. What do we mean by profit? Like, especially if we think of those consumers' utility dimensions. Popularity. So gain popularity, right? So is it we write profit? That's definitely there. Gain popularity. Yes. Known for what? Having good food, like known for something, right? Having known for having good, delicious food.
Customer experience.
Customer experience. What do you mean by customer experience? You mean fast service?
Yeah.
Okay, fast service. Let's write it that way. Because customer experience can be a lot of things. Fast service. You have some good service. Yeah, friendly. Yes, you and me.
Customer loyalty, so they keep coming back.
Yeah, customer retention.
Yeah.
Okay, let me write these two. Good service, customer retention. That's important. If you don't come back.
Like the location.
Location. What do you mean by location? Like having a prime location, or or having a nice interior?
No, like being in a spot where like their target markets can also be. So like
Okay.
just being in spots.
Having a nice location. Yeah, just staying competitive, right? Staying competitive. Any other ideas?
Firm growth.
Firm growth. You're growing, right? So it's like a healthy growth. Multiple locations, franchising, right? Or multiple locations. So these are all, yeah, innovation, that's great, so, right here, innovation. So these are all, yeah, all
Customer service.
customer service, so good customer service. Okay, so these are, if you are an entrepreneur, if you own a restaurant, might be the things that you might think about, like just like, all right, I need to be in a prime location, I need to have fast service, I need to have great food, I need to retain, I want my customers to come back, I want to stay competitive and grow, and in the future I want to distribute franchise or multiple locations, one in River North, one in Westwood, one here and there. Now my question is this: even so, as an entrepreneur, you might think of that, but even for Subway, a restaurant like a successful big chain, or a McDonald's, and or Starbucks, or what is it, premium, that, and that does entertainment group, like these are kind of premium restaurants in Chicago, so they are also a chain, you can think of that, although every restaurant is different concept, different food, even some of them are bar, but etc. There are several chains like that. So even for those like successfully established $1 million businesses, is it possible to achieve all those goals?
Yes.
Remember my examples: McDonald's, Subway, and these like high-end restaurant chains like Let Us Entertain You, or another one in Chicago, I can't remember the name now. But there are several chains like that.
A lot of them are often opposed to each other. But you could say there's a trade-off sometimes between like fast service and quality food.
Right, there are trade-offs. What might be, so a good trade-off is a fast service and quality, good quality of food, maybe, right? Just like these Let Us Entertain You group, I think, I'm not sure if it's the same, but let's say that there's a fancy restaurant called in the Westwood called Royster. It's a Michelin star restaurant, it's really good. And now, can we expect that that Royster would be as fast as McDonald's? Do we even want that? Would it make sense for the Royster to aspire to be as fast as McDonald's? Because then they need to sacrifice the quality, right? Just because it's a Michelin star restaurant, there's a sophisticated recipe to do things, versus a McDonald's is catering for people on the go, like, fast, and I cannot say healthy food, something. So like, they will just have, basically, these are different market segmentation. Also price point is like, if you go to a Michelin star restaurant, you would just probably spend in one meal for the entire year or even more than you might spend in McDonald's restaurant. So a company essentially have goals of making profit. Yes, everybody wants to make a profit, but the way to go into profit just differs drastically. Just like as a consumer, we have different set of functions for what we want from a product. A company has a different dimensions, so to speak, of performance. So these goals also can be categorized in a hardcore financial goals or hardcore operational goals, but ultimately they need to fit into one of these 4 dimensions of performance. Roughly, efficiency, quality, variety, and time. And these boxes just shows us that, what was your name again? Wally.
Like the robot?
Yeah, I
Oh,
was
yeah.
that. Alright, okay, that's a good name. So, as well as that, these companies need to make trade-off between these dimensions. So like, efficiency, you can be cost efficient, like McDonald's, price point is low because ingredients are low, but then you cannot really claim the same quality level with Royster. You can offer a lot of variety with Subway, but then you cannot simply say that it is as fast as McDonald's. So we spend some time in Subway. Even though it's relatively fast, but nevertheless, every customer has his own specific sandwich. As opposed to McDonald's, they just like fry the thing and just give it to you on the shelf. And so these are the dimensions that the company do trade-off. And basically, a firm capability is defined as, by using those trade-offs, its capability to fit the customer's utility function. So you see, this is us, and this is firm's objectives. And these are the 4 dimensions of the performance. What a firm does, or what an entrepreneur does, is that they sit down and they think about that. Who is my customer? What kind of a customer I am? What is his or her, or what's their utility functions would look like on average? Obviously, a Royster customer can go into a McDonald's, and a McDonald's customer can go into a Royster, depending on the time of the day, year, whatever. It's a continuum of spectrum. But then they have some sort of a, and so to speak, an average customer profile while they are serving, and they need to make this trade-off to map that function. To say that, okay, if I'm a Royster, then I will just basically charge a lot of prices, but then I will, I may be even inconvenient in many ways, like location and time. I might be far away in a meat pack industry, and I might actually take a little bit more time than necessary to cook something, but ultimately I'll serve you a great food. You remember, I know this is the second tip that I'm giving away my age, but do you know Seinfeld?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. I love this class. Because last time I was cracking Seinfeld jokes and they were saying that we don't know Seinfeld.
Oh.
My mom likes that. So there was Soup Nazi, you remember that? That famous, and actually that guy was a real soup location in New York City, where the characters, Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David, were going to buy soups, and they decided to make a skit about it. And Soup Nazi is a good example here. So it's long, inconvenient, he even harasses the people, but the soup is great, so the quality. So as consumers, it's not, we are also flexible. So like in Soup Nazi case, depending on what we trade off, we also make trades off that like, all right, the guy is like really nasty, but the soup is amazing, so I'll just wait and eat you. So that, and success of the firm comes from that. So just, and ultimately, it's important to realize that as a person as well, like, we're not capable of doing everything. That holds very much so for the firm. So like, they are not be able to do very well in every dimension. Even the most successful firms like Amazon, they are not be able to do the everything in all those dimensions. So you need to have sacrifice. And that is called matching supply with demand. And that's the entire idea of operations. So operations is basically give us tools, how can we use this trade-off in a better way to match the supply and demand and basically generate the profit in general for the company or minimize the cost. So basically it's providing customers what they want while making a profit. So let's talk about the strategic trade-off. We already talked about that, like cost versus quality. It's Domino's Pizza versus Giordano's. This is also, it takes on average 45 minutes versus like 10 minutes to get a pizza. Customization versus waiting time. Subway, you have your customization, but it's just slower than McDonald's. And this is what we discussed. So let's get a little bit more concrete and go back to the theory and then how we can map different companies on a plane, two-dimensional simple plane, basically on two of these 4 dimensions. Obviously, we can also try to map them on the 3rd dimension, and we cannot map them on the 4th dimension, but we're going to keep it really simple, because we have 2 dimensions of those 4 performance dimensions, and let's see how can we map 2 companies or multiple companies so that we have an idea where each company stands in that dimension. So let's think about the restaurant A. has a $4 meal and 10 minutes waiting time. So my two dimensions in this case is this. So if I write here, everybody sees.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good vantage point. So my two dimensions is like that. So this is let's call it speed. And this is the cost efficiency. Okay, so this is the speed, like service speed, and the restaurant has a $4 meal, and the restaurant B has $5 meal and 5 minutes waiting. So now, as I just write it there, the important thing to remember here is that higher cost efficiency means lower cost. Because we are taking the company's perspective, but it doesn't matter even if you take the consumer's perspective, because if the cost efficiency is higher, you would expect that they would not charge so high prices. So higher cost efficiency means lower price. Therefore, remember that the restaurant A has a higher cost efficiency than restaurant B. It's a $4 meal, so this is high, and this is low. And speed is intuitive, like high speed versus low speed. Okay, so then restaurant A is like $4 meal, and $4, and it's a little bit, it's a little bit slow. So it's like 10 minutes. The other company, restaurant B, has $5 a meal, and it's faster. So 5 minutes. So this is A, this is B. So now we map them, and a nicer picture is here. So both of these restaurants make strategic choices between two dimensions of that four performance dimension. It says that I'll be a little bit slow, but I'll be cheaper. I'll be a little bit fast, but I'll be slightly more expensive. So this is a choice between how can you make this choice from operational perspective? Restaurant has less investment in kitchen stuff, equipment, etc. This one has made more investment over there, or it improved the process. So like by using operations management, so it just kind of optimized the process. So it made a choice. So we will talk about that later. But they made the choices. So which restaurant would you consider prefer as a customer?
I go with the restaurant B,
Why?
because for just $1 more, I'm cutting my wait time in half.
So apparently your utility function values time than like $1. For some other person, it might be that that dollar is more valuable to me. I have a lot of time in my hand. I will wait. I have nothing to do, and I will save $1 by waiting. So this is a typical choice we do. Every day, every time, in different situations, and we say that, shall I just go faster? Shall I take Uber? Or shall I just take the public transport from going A to B? If at my destination there's a nice bar and I have enough time on my place, then I will say I'll take the Uber, I'll take the subway or bus, take a beer there and just go in. Otherwise, if I'm rushing, which I usually do, then I take Uber. I make Uber rich and myself poor. And so there's no dominant choice in this case, right? But it's not always the case. So there might be cases where there's a dominant choice. So in this case, these restaurants segment the customers. Nice thing to do. Do they compete with each other necessarily? Not really, because depending on at least we can imagine a certain type of customer profile choosing between A and B. Just like we imagine a certain type of customer profile that chooses between Royster and McDonald's, the same is happening. This is called market segmentation. That's what McDonald's and Subway and Giordano and Domino's coexist and make all money because we're different consumers at different time points. Now, we said the price sensitive consumers, time sensitive consumers. Now let's look at restaurant C. So we place restaurant C. So we place restaurant C somewhere here. It costs more, let's say $6, and it's 15-minute waiting time. So this is C. Do we ever want to go to the C? Same question like that. Would you ever buy a soup from Soup Nazi if the soup was really crap? You wouldn't, right? Just he's unfriendly, the waiting time is long, and on top of that, soup is not good. He's out of the market. And that is exactly happening here. And that concept is called Pareto dominance, which means that these two other companies successfully coexisting in the consumer space, Pareto dominates the other one, basically runs them out of the market, because no consumer wants to go there. They say that, well, it's slow and expensive. Why would I do it? Unless there is a third dimension that the food is really great, that's a different story. But we're just now narrowing ourselves to that. So basically, this is called Pareto efficiency and Pareto dominance. So nobody would prefer that C is a Pareto dominated by A and B. So let's look at these examples. So an efficient frontier is the set of firms which is neither of that firm is Pareto dominated by the other one. So let's go back to this example. So to find a firm to be Pareto dominated or not, all you need to do is look at the trace of, in this two-dimensional case. If it's multiple dimensional, it's a tricky business, but in this two-dimensional case, it's easy to see it. We only look at the trace of these guys. So like the trace, this rectangle of B is this, and the trace of A is this, and the trace of A is here. Now, any firm falls into the trace, rectangular trace of the other firm is Pareto dominated by that one. In that case, C is Pareto dominated by both B and A, because it is more expensive than B and slower than B, and same holds for A. Now, if I had another firm called D, and I place D here. Now, is D more expensive than B? D is cheaper than B, right? Like, so D is actually something like $4.5. But then it is slower than A and B, both of them. So, and it's in the trace of A. So when it's in the trace of A, we say that D is Pareto dominated by only A, not by B. But the problem here starts for the D. It doesn't necessarily that you will be Pareto dominated by 10 firms. One firm running you out of the market is enough. So like D is basically Pareto dominated by A, and therefore it's not in the efficient frontier. An efficient frontier is this frontier, which consists of only non-Pareto dominated firms. Right? It's a kind of a nice frontier. It's an industry set, gold standard, so to speak. Like this industry set where so there might be multiple firms like here, like in this example, B, C, and D are Pareto, they're not Pareto dominating each other, but A is Pareto dominated by which firms over there? Any ideas? Like A in the first example.
All three?
A is Pareto dominated by B and C, but not by D, right? Because in dimension 1, A is like actually higher than. So let's draw it. It's not easy to see that the first time, but once we start drawing it, it might be easier. So let me do it this way. So in these two dimensions, we always want higher the better. Okay, that's important. If it's a cost, we always want lower cost, which means that higher cost efficiency is better. So this example is like that. So this is B, this is C, D, and this is D. Now, A is somewhere here. And let's call it again like cost efficiency and speed, just for the sake of example. And what was our rule? Our rule is that find those firms and look at their traces, and those, like the B's trace is here, and the C's trace is somewhere here. But as you can see, A is in these two rectangles of that B and C, but not D. So A is Pareto dominated by only the firms B and C. So essentially what I'm doing is that I'm looking for, if you feel more comfortable, what you can do is that you can say that is A more efficient than D in terms of cost efficiency?
No.
No, because it's lower. Is it more efficient than C? No.
No.
Is it more efficient than D? No. Is it more efficient than D in terms of speed?
Yes.
It's more efficient, but it's worse than B and C. Therefore, it will be Pareto dominated by B and C. So that's the concept of Pareto domination. So we will go over it one more time in the next Thursday. And so enjoy the rest of the day.